Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the email that would change everything. The Google logo gleamed from her laptop screen as she read the invitation to join Calico Labs, a mysterious new subsidiary promising to solve death itself. The year was 2013, and Silicon Valley's most ambitious project was about to begin. Arthur Levinson, former Genentech CEO, had been handpicked by Larry Page to lead this revolutionary venture. With $1.5 billion in initial funding, Calico represented Google's boldest leap into biotechnology. The mission statement was deceptively simple: extend human lifespan by decades, perhaps centuries. Chen, a renowned cellular biologist from Stanford, found herself among the first recruits. The recruitment process was unlike anything she'd experienced. Extensive background checks, non-disclosure agreements thicker than textbooks, and interviews conducted in unmarked buildings across Silicon Valley. "We're not just fighting aging," Levinson explained during her final interview. "We're declaring war on death itself. The question isn't whether we can do it, but how quickly we can achieve it." The promise was intoxicating: unlimited resources, cutting-edge technology, and the backing of one of the world's most powerful corporations. Chen signed without hesitation, unaware that she was entering a web of secrecy that would ultimately consume everything she believed about scientific integrity. Within months, Calico had assembled a dream team of researchers from Harvard, MIT, and the world's leading pharmaceutical companies. The media hailed it as the dawn of a new era. Death, they proclaimed, had finally met its match. But behind the gleaming facade of Google's Mountain View campus, darker forces were already at work. 6 months after joining Calico, Dr. Chen descended into a laboratory that officially didn't exist. 3 levels beneath the main research facility, behind biometric scanners and armed security, lay the true heart of Google's longevity project. The underground complex stretched for acres, housing equipment worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Cryogenic chambers lined the walls, each containing tissue samples from the world's longest living organisms. Hydra, jellyfish, and tortoises, nature's immortals, were being dissected at the molecular level. "Welcome to Project Methuselah," announced Dr. A. Marcus Webb, Calico's head of experimental therapeutics. Webb had been recruited from a classified Pentagon program, his previous work shrouded in military secrecy. His presence at Calico raised questions that no one dared ask aloud. The laboratory operated under protocols that violated every principle of scientific transparency. Research data was compartmentalized, with individual teams knowing only fragments of the larger picture. Publications were forbidden without explicit approval from a shadowy oversight committee that included representatives from pharmaceutical giants and government agencies. Chen's assignment was specific: develop a compound that could reverse cellular aging at the genetic level. The target was telomerase, the enzyme responsible for cellular immortality. If they could artificially extend telomeres in human cells, they could theoretically halt aging indefinitely. The work progressed at an unprecedented pace. Within 18 months, Chen's team had synthesized a compound they designated Cal-1. Initial tests on laboratory mice were extraordinary. Subjects showed complete reversal of age-related cellular damage within weeks. But as Chen prepared to publish their findings, she received an unexpected visit from Webb. "This research goes no further," he warned. "Cal-1 is now classified under national security protocols." The promise of scientific glory was evaporating, replaced by something far more sinister. The boardroom at Calico headquarters buzzed with tension as representatives from AbbVie, the pharmaceutical giant, finalized their partnership agreement. The $1.5 billion deal, announced publicly as a collaboration on age-related diseases, concealed a far more ambitious agenda. Dr. Chen watched from the observation deck as executives in expensive suits shook hands over humanity's future. AbbVie brought manufacturing capabilities and regulatory expertise that Calico desperately needed. In return, they would share in the profits from what could become the most valuable drug in human history. "The public partnership is just the beginning," Webb explained to the assembled research team. "AbbVie has connections we need: FDA fast-track approval, international distribution networks, and most importantly, the ability to conduct trials without oversight. The implications were staggering. Normal drug development required years of transparent testing, peer review, and regulatory approval. But Cal-1 would bypass these safeguards through a network of private clinics and offshore research facilities. Chen learned that AbbVie had already identified test sites in countries with minimal regulatory oversight. The Cayman Islands, Singapore, and several Eastern European nations had agreed to host trials in exchange for substantial financial incentives. The first human subjects would be wealthy individuals willing to pay millions for experimental treatment. Tech billionaires, aging celebrities, and political elites, people whose deaths would be noticed, but whose medical treatments remained private. "We're not just developing a drug," Levinson announced during a closed-door meeting. "We're creating a new class system. Those who can afford immortality and those who cannot." The ethical implications were overwhelming, but the financial projections were even more compelling. Conservative estimates suggested Cal-1 could generate trillions in revenue, making it the most profitable pharmaceutical product ever created. As Chen left the meeting, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing a line from which there would be no return. The private clinic in Grand Cayman looked like a luxury resort, complete with palm trees and pristine beaches. But beneath its tropical facade lay one of the world's most advanced medical facilities, funded entirely by Calico and operated in complete secrecy. Dr. Chen arrived on the island in March 2019, carrying vials of Cal-1 that represented 5 years of intensive research. The first human trials were about to begin, and she would oversee the administration of humanity's first anti-aging drug. The initial subjects were carefully selected. Richard Blackstone, a 73-year-old tech entrepreneur worth $12 billion, had volunteered to be the first human recipient. His motivation was simple. He wanted to live long enough to see humanity colonize Mars. "I've spent my entire fortune preparing for this moment," Blackstone explained as Chen prepared the injection. "If this works, I'll have infinite time to earn it back." The treatment protocol was aggressive. Daily injections of Cal-1 for 30 days, followed by extensive monitoring and testing. Each subject paid $50 million for the experimental therapy, with the understanding that results were not guaranteed. Within the first week, the results were extraordinary. Blackstone's cellular markers showed dramatic improvement. His telomeres were lengthening, damaged DNA was repairing itself, and age-related inflammation was disappearing. Blood tests revealed the cellular profile of a man decades younger. By day 15, physical changes were visible. Blackstone's gray hair was darkening, wrinkles were fading, and his energy levels had increased dramatically. The other test subjects showed similar improvements, creating an atmosphere of euphoria among the research team. Chen documented everything meticulously, knowing that they were witnessing medical history. The dream of reversing aging was becoming reality, and she was at the center of humanity's greatest breakthrough. But on day 18, something went wrong. Blackstone collapsed during a routine examination, his vital signs fluctuating wildly. The miracle cure was about to become a nightmare. The medical emergency alarm pierced the tropical calm of the Cayman clinic as Dr. Chen rushed to Richard Blackstone's bedside. The billionaire entrepreneur who had appeared decades younger just days before was now convulsing uncontrollably, his body rejecting the very treatment that had promised immortality. "His cellular regeneration is accelerating beyond control," reported Dr. Lisa Park, the clinic's head physician. "It's like his body is aging and de-aging simultaneously." The monitors displayed impossible readings. Blackstone's telomeres were extending and contracting rapidly, creating a cellular chaos that defied medical understanding. His organs were regenerating so quickly that they couldn't maintain their structural integrity. Within hours, the other test subjects began experiencing similar symptoms. The wealthy elite who had paid millions for eternal youth were now fighting for their lives in a medical facility that officially didn't exist. Chen frantically contacted Webb at Calico headquarters, but the response was chilling. "Contain the situation," he ordered. "No outside medical intervention, no contact with families. This cannot become public." The clinic went into lockdown. Communication with the outside world was severed, and the medical staff were confined to the facility. Chen realized they were no longer conducting research, they were managing a cover-up. Over the next 72 hours, 3 of the 12 test subjects died from what the official reports would later describe as complications from experimental therapy. Their bodies had essentially consumed themselves in an accelerated aging process that reversed all previous improvements. Blackstone survived, but the man who emerged from the medical crisis bore little resemblance to the confident entrepreneur who had entered the trial. His cellular age fluctuated wildly, leaving him physically and mentally unstable. "We've created monsters," Chen whispered to herself as she watched the survivors struggle with their transformed bodies. The promise of immortality had become a curse worse than natural aging. The greatest medical breakthrough in human history had become its greatest disaster. The emergency meeting at Calico headquarters took place at 3 a.m., with participants joining via encrypted video links from around the globe. Dr. Chen found herself facing a tribunal of corporate executives, government officials, and pharmaceutical representatives who seemed more concerned with damage control than human lives. "The Cayman trials never happened," announced a woman identified only as Agent Morrison from an undisclosed government agency. "All records will be classified under national security protocols. The test subjects have signed additional non-disclosure agreements in exchange for ongoing medical care." The cover-up was already in motion. The clinic in Grand Cayman was being dismantled, with all equipment and research materials transferred to a secure facility in Nevada. The surviving test subjects were relocated to private medical facilities, where their conditions could be monitored and concealed. Webb presented the official narrative. Cal-1 had shown promise in animal trials, but failed to meet safety standards for human testing. The program was being suspended indefinitely, with all research redirected toward less ambitious longevity treatments. "The families of the deceased subjects have been compensated," Webb continued. "They believe their loved ones died from natural causes during routine medical procedures. The death certificates have been appropriately modified." Chen felt sick as she realized the scope of the deception. 3 people had died, 9 others were permanently damaged, and the entire incident was being erased from history. The $1.5 billion investment would be written off as a failed research initiative, with no mention of human casualties. "What about the other research teams?" Chen asked. "They know Cal-1 was ready for human trials." Morrison's response was chilling. "Personnel involved in the project are being reassigned or terminated. Those who refuse to cooperate will face legal consequences under the Espionage Act." The meeting ended with clear instructions. Chen would destroy all research related to Cal-1 and accept a transfer to a different division. Her choice was simple: comply or face prosecution for violating national security. As she left the building, Chen realized that Google's promise to solve death had instead created a conspiracy that would haunt her forever. 2 years after the Cayman disaster, Dr. Sarah Chen sat in a dimly lit coffee shop in downtown San Francisco, her hands trembling as she slid a USB drive across the table to investigative journalist Michael Torres. The drive contained everything: research data, trial records, and video evidence of the cover-up that had consumed her life. "They're still out there," Chen whispered, glancing nervously at the other patrons. "The survivors from the trials. Calico has them in private facilities studying their conditions while keeping them hidden from the world." Torres had been investigating Calico for months, following rumors of failed experiments and missing researchers. Chen's contact had come through encrypted channels, with promises of evidence that would expose one of Silicon Valley's darkest secrets. The USB drive contained terabytes of classified information, laboratory footage showing the horrific effects of Cal-1, financial records documenting payments to silence families, and correspondence between Calico executives and government officials coordinating the cover-up. "Richard Blackstone is still alive," Chen revealed, "but he's not the same person who entered that clinic. His cellular age fluctuates between 30 and 90 years old, sometimes changing within hours. He's become a prisoner in his own body." The evidence was overwhelming. Internal emails showed that Calico executives knew Cal-1 was unstable before human trials began, but proceeded anyway under pressure from investors and government partners. The rush to market had prioritized profits over safety. with catastrophic results. Chen had spent 2 years documenting the aftermath. Several researchers who refused to participate in the cover-up had died in suspicious accidents. Others had been discredited through coordinated smear campaigns that destroyed their careers and reputations. They offered me $50 million to stay quiet, Chen continued. When I refused, they threatened my family. My daughter received college rejection letters from schools that had already accepted her. My husband's research funding was mysteriously canceled. Torres recorded every word, knowing that Chen's testimony would form the foundation of an exposé that could bring down one of the world's most powerful corporations. But he also understood the risks. Previous journalists who had investigated Calico had faced legal harassment and personal destruction. As they prepared to leave, Chen delivered her final warning. They're not done. Calico is still operating, still experimenting. The next trial could be even worse. Michael Torres spent 6 months verifying Chen's evidence, cross-referencing documents with public records and tracking down additional sources. What he discovered was a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government and corporate power. The investigation revealed that Calico's partnership with AbbVie was just the beginning. Through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts, the Longevity Project had attracted funding from defense contractors, intelligence agencies, and foreign governments. The promise of life extension technology had created a global race with potentially devastating consequences. Torres identified at least 12 other test subjects from the Cayman trials, all of whom had been relocated to private medical facilities around the world. Their families believed they were receiving cutting-edge treatment for age-related diseases, unaware that their loved ones had become unwilling participants in an ongoing experiment. The financial trail was equally disturbing. Calico had received additional funding through classified government programs, suggesting that life extension research was considered a matter of national security. The implications were staggering. Immortality technology could fundamentally alter global power structures. Through encrypted communications with other whistleblowers, Torres learned that the Cal-1 disaster had not ended Calico's research. The company had simply moved operations to more secure locations, including underground facilities in Nevada and offshore laboratories in international waters. They're using the survivors as test subjects, revealed Dr. James Mitchell, a former Calico researcher who had fled to Canada. Their unstable cellular conditions provide unique insights into aging mechanisms. They're essentially torturing these people in the name of science. The investigation also uncovered evidence of international cooperation. Similar longevity programs were operating in China, Russia, and several European countries, all sharing research and competing for breakthrough discoveries. The race for immortality had become a new form of arms race. Torres realized that exposing Calico would require more than journalism. It would need coordinated action from law enforcement, regulatory agencies, and international organizations. The conspiracy was too vast and too well protected for any single reporter to dismantle. But as he prepared to publish his findings, Torres received an unexpected visitor who would change everything. The man who appeared at Torres's apartment door looked like a typical government bureaucrat. Gray suit, unremarkable features, and the kind of forgettable face that suggested professional anonymity. He introduced himself as Agent Harrison from the Department of Health and Human Services, but his credentials seemed too perfect, too clean. "Mr. Torres, we need to discuss your upcoming article about Calico Labs," Harrison said, settling into the journalist's living room without invitation. "There are national security implications you may not have considered." Torres had expected this moment. Investigative journalists who threatened powerful interests often received such visits, usually accompanied by veiled threats and offers of cooperation. But Harrison's approach was different. He seemed genuinely concerned about the consequences of publication. "The longevity research you're investigating isn't just about corporate profits," Harrison explained. "It's part of a larger strategic initiative to maintain American technological superiority. If this information becomes public, it could compromise ongoing operations and endanger national security." The agent revealed that Calico's research was connected to military applications. Life extension technology could create super soldiers capable of extended combat operations. while cellular regeneration techniques could revolutionize battlefield medicine. The failed trials were setbacks, but the underlying research remained strategically valuable. "We're not asking you to suppress the story," Harrison continued. "We're asking you to consider the broader implications. Publication could trigger international incidents, compromise ongoing investigations, and potentially endanger the lives of people you're trying to protect." Torres found himself facing an impossible choice. Publishing the story could expose corporate wrongdoing and government complicity, but it might also trigger a global race for longevity technology that could destabilize international relations. Harrison left behind a classified briefing document that outlined the scope of international longevity research. The competition was more intense than Torres had imagined, with multiple countries pursuing similar technologies through increasingly dangerous experiments. "You have 48 hours to decide," Harrison said as he departed. "After that, the decision will be made for you." Torres stared at the briefing document, realizing that the Calico conspiracy was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Torres spent the next 24 hours diving deeper into the classified briefing, uncovering a global network of longevity research that made Calico's operations seem small by comparison. The document revealed coordinated programs across multiple countries, all racing to achieve the same impossible goal: conquering human mortality. The Chinese program, codenamed Project Phoenix, had reportedly achieved breakthrough results using CRISPR gene editing combined with synthetic biology. Russian researchers were experimenting with cybernetic implants that could repair cellular damage in real time. European Union countries had formed a secret consortium to share research and resources. Each program faced similar challenges to Calico's Cal-1 disaster. The briefing document contained reports of failed trials, cover-ups, and human casualties from facilities around the world. The pursuit of immortality was leaving a trail of destruction that governments were desperately trying to conceal. Torres realized that exposing Calico alone would be insufficient. The entire network needed to be revealed. But the scope of the conspiracy was overwhelming, involving intelligence agencies, pharmaceutical corporations, and political leaders from dozens of countries. A secure message from Dr. Chen provided additional context. "They're planning another trial. Calico has developed KL2, supposedly safer than the original compound. The test subjects will be volunteers from military special forces, soldiers who've already signed their lives away to their countries." The implications were terrifying. If KL2 succeeded, it could create an immortal warrior class that would fundamentally alter global military balance. If it failed like its predecessor, it would produce super soldiers with unstable cellular structures, potentially creating weapons of mass destruction in human form. Torres contacted his editor at the Washington Post, explaining the scope of the story and the potential consequences of publication. The newspaper's legal team was already preparing for the inevitable lawsuits and government pressure that would follow. "We're not just exposing corporate malfeasance," Torres explained. "We're revealing a global conspiracy that could trigger the next world war." As he prepared the final version of his article, Torres received one last message from an unknown source. "The truth must come out, but be prepared for the consequences. They will destroy you to protect this secret." The Washington Post's servers crashed within minutes of publishing Torres's exposé. The article, titled "The Immortality Conspiracy: How Tech Giants and Governments Secretly Experiment on Human Life Extension," triggered an immediate global response that exceeded all expectations. Within hours, government officials from multiple countries were denying involvement while simultaneously classifying related documents under national security protocols. Calico's stock price plummeted as investors demanded explanations for the hidden research programs and human casualties. Torres watched the chaos unfold from a secure location, having anticipated the backlash. His article contained enough evidence to trigger congressional investigations, international inquiries, and criminal prosecutions. But it also exposed him to retaliation from some of the world's most powerful organizations. The public reaction was explosive. Social media platforms buzzed with conspiracy theories, while mainstream news outlets struggled to verify the incredible claims. The revelation that tech billionaires and government officials had been secretly pursuing immortality, while ordinary citizens faced natural aging, sparked outrage across political and social boundaries. Dr. Chen emerged from hiding to testify before a hastily convened congressional committee. Her testimony, broadcast live around the world, provided devastating details about the Cayman trials and the subsequent cover-up. The image of a respected scientist describing how corporate greed had led to human experimentation became an iconic moment in the scandal. "We promised to solve death," Chen told the committee. "Instead, we created something worse than death, an existence of perpetual suffering for those brave enough to trust us with their lives." The international response was swift and severe. The European Union launched criminal investigations into pharmaceutical companies involved in the conspiracy. China denied all involvement while quietly shutting down related research programs. Russia simply refused to comment, leading to speculation about ongoing secret operations. Within a week, Calico announced the suspension of all longevity research and the resignation of key executives. Arthur Levinson issued a carefully worded statement acknowledging regrettable incidents while denying any deliberate wrongdoing. But Torres knew the story was far from over. The global network of longevity research was too valuable and too advanced to simply disappear because of public exposure. 6 months after the exposé, the promised investigations had largely stalled in bureaucratic procedures and legal challenges. Congressional hearings produced dramatic testimony but little concrete action, while international inquiries faced jurisdictional obstacles and diplomatic pressure. Torres continued investigating from his new base in Switzerland, having fled the United States after receiving credible death threats. The journalist who had exposed one of the century's greatest conspiracies now lived under constant security protection, his life forever changed by the pursuit of truth. Dr. Chen had disappeared entirely, last seen boarding a flight to an undisclosed location after her congressional testimony. Sources suggested she was in witness protection, but government officials refused to confirm her status or whereabouts. The survivors of the Cayman trials remained hidden in private medical facilities, their conditions unchanged, and their existence officially denied. Families who had lost loved ones in the experiments received substantial financial settlements in exchange for continued silence. Most disturbing was the evidence that longevity research had not stopped. It had simply moved deeper underground. Intelligence reports suggested that multiple countries were continuing their programs using more sophisticated security measures and offshore locations beyond legal jurisdiction. "The genie is out of the bottle," explained Dr. Robert Hayes, a bioethicist who had testified before Congress. "The technology exists, the knowledge has been gained, and the potential profits are too enormous to ignore. This research will continue regardless of public opinion or legal restrictions." Torres had achieved his goal of exposing the conspiracy, but the victory felt hollow. The public knew the truth, but the truth had not set anyone free. Instead, it had driven the research further into the shadows, making oversight and accountability even more difficult. The final irony was that Calico's failure had actually accelerated global longevity research. Other programs learned from Cal 1's mistakes, developing safer approaches that might actually succeed where Google's ambitious project had failed catastrophically. As Torres prepared his follow-up investigation, he realized that the immortality conspiracy was not ending. It was evolving into something even more dangerous and secretive. A year after the Calico exposé, Torres discovered that the longevity research landscape had fundamentally transformed. The public scandal had eliminated the naive optimism of Silicon Valley's approach, replacing it with the cold professionalism of military-industrial complexes and intelligence agencies. The new players operated with unprecedented secrecy. Private military contractors like Blackwater had established biotechnology divisions focused on human enhancement research. Intelligence agencies from multiple countries were funding longevity programs through classified budgets that escaped public scrutiny. Most concerning was the emergence of international criminal organizations in the longevity market. Torres's sources revealed that human trafficking networks were supplying test subjects to offshore research facilities, targeting vulnerable populations who would not be missed by authorities. The ethical constraints that limited legitimate research have been abandoned, explained Dr. Maria Santos, a former World Health Organization official who had become a whistleblower. These new programs are conducting experiments that would have been unthinkable even during Calico's darkest moments. The technology had also evolved beyond simple chemical compounds like Cal-1. New approaches combine genetic engineering, nanotechnology, and artificial intelligence to create more sophisticated life extension treatments. Early reports suggested these methods were showing promise without the catastrophic side effects that had destroyed the Cayman trials. Torres learned that several world leaders were secretly receiving experimental longevity treatments, creating a shadow class of potentially immortal political figures whose extended lifespans could fundamentally alter global governance. The economic implications were staggering. Black market longevity treatments were selling for hundreds of millions of dollars, creating a new form of ultimate luxury good accessible only to the ultra-wealthy. The inequality between mortal and potentially immortal humans was becoming a new form of class warfare. "We're witnessing the birth of a post-human society," warned Dr. Hayes during a clandestine meeting with Torres. "The division won't be between rich and poor, but between mortal and immortal, and the immortals are already consolidating power." Torres realized that his exposé of Calico had inadvertently triggered an even more dangerous phase of longevity research, one operating entirely outside legal and ethical boundaries. Torres's investigation into the post-Calico longevity underground led him to an abandoned pharmaceutical facility in Eastern Europe, where he witnessed firsthand the horrifying evolution of life extension research. The facility, operated by a consortium of criminal organizations and rogue scientists, represented everything that legitimate research had tried to avoid. The subjects were primarily refugees and trafficking victims, people whose disappearances would not trigger international investigations. They were being used to test increasingly extreme longevity treatments, with mortality rates that would have shut down any legitimate research program. "We've learned from Calico's mistakes," explained Dr. Viktor Kozlov, a former Russian military scientist who now operated the facility. "The key is not to promise immortality, but to achieve incremental improvements that can be tested safely on expendable populations." Torres, posing as a potential investor, was given a tour of the facility's laboratories. The technology was crude but effective. Genetic modifications that extended cellular lifespan by 20–30%, cybernetic implants that repaired organ damage, and experimental drugs that slowed aging without the catastrophic acceleration seen in Cal-1. The most disturbing discovery was that several test subjects had been successfully treated, achieving measurable life extension without serious side effects. The underground research was actually succeeding where legitimate programs had failed, but at a cost in human suffering that defied comprehension. "The ethical research programs were doomed from the start," Kozlov continued. "They tried to achieve perfection without accepting casualties. We understand that progress requires sacrifice, and we have access to unlimited test subjects." Torres documented everything, knowing that exposing this network would be even more dangerous than revealing Calico's conspiracy. These organizations operated outside legal jurisdiction and had no qualms about eliminating threats to their operations. The facility's client list included political leaders, tech billionaires, and criminal kingpins from around the world. They were paying enormous sums for treatments that had been tested on unwilling subjects, creating a market that incentivized continued human experimentation. As Torres prepared to leave, he realized that the longevity conspiracy had evolved beyond corporate malfeasance into something approaching crimes against humanity. Dr. Sarah Chen emerged from hiding to lead an unlikely alliance of scientists, journalists, and activists determined to stop the underground longevity network. Operating from a secure compound in Costa Rica, her organization had become the primary source of intelligence about illegal life extension research. "We created this monster," Chen explained to Torres during their reunion. "Legitimate researchers like myself opened the door to these horrors through our ambition and naivety. Now we have a responsibility to shut it down." The resistance network included former Calico employees, government whistleblowers, and survivors of failed experiments. They had been tracking the underground facilities, documenting human rights violations, and working to expose the criminal organizations profiting from illegal longevity research. Their intelligence revealed a global network of at least 50 facilities conducting human experimentation, with an estimated 10,000 victims being held against their will. The scale of the operation dwarfed historical medical atrocities, representing a new form of systematic human exploitation. The technology works, Chen admitted reluctantly. The underground programs have achieved measurable life extension in hundreds of subjects, but the cost in human suffering makes their success morally worthless. The resistance faced enormous challenges. The criminal organizations had unlimited funding, government protection in corrupt countries, and access to military-grade security. Several resistance members had been assassinated, while others faced constant threats and harassment. Chen's team had developed a strategy to expose the network through coordinated media releases, legal challenges, and direct action against the facilities. They were working with international human rights organizations and sympathetic government officials to build a case for intervention. "We can't stop the technology," Chen explained. "Longevity research will continue regardless of our efforts. But we can ensure it develops through legitimate channels with proper ethical oversight, rather than through criminal exploitation." The resistance had also been working to rescue victims from the underground facilities, establishing safe houses and medical treatment centers for survivors of failed experiments. Torres realized that the story had evolved beyond journalism into a moral crusade that would define the future of human enhancement research. The coordinated international raids began at dawn on March 15, 2024, targeting underground longevity facilities across 3 continents simultaneously. Torres accompanied the FBI team that stormed the Eastern European facility he had previously investigated, witnessing the culmination of 2 years of resistance efforts. The raid revealed horrors that exceeded even the resistance's intelligence estimates. Hundreds of test subjects were discovered in various stages of experimental treatment, many showing severe side effects from failed longevity procedures. The facility's records documented systematic torture disguised as medical research. "This is worse than anything we imagined," said Agent Sarah Martinez, the FBI's lead investigator. "These people weren't just conducting illegal experiments. They were operating a human trafficking network specifically designed to supply test subjects for life extension research." The rescued victims told stories of being kidnapped from refugee camps, homeless shelters, and impoverished communities around the world. They had been promised medical treatment or employment opportunities, only to become unwilling participants in experiments that violated every principle of medical ethics. Dr. Kozlov and his team were arrested, but their capture revealed the true scope of the conspiracy. The facility was just one node in a network that included government officials, pharmaceutical executives, and criminal organizations from dozens of countries. The evidence seized during the raids documented successful longevity treatments that had been tested on unwilling subjects. Several political leaders and billionaires had received these treatments, achieving measurable life extension through procedures that had cost hundreds of lives to develop. "We've broken the immediate network," Chen explained to Torres as they surveyed the rescued victims. "But the technology and knowledge still exist. This will drive the research even deeper underground unless we can establish legitimate alternatives." The raids triggered a global crisis as governments struggled to address the revelation that longevity technology had been developed through systematic human experimentation. The ethical implications were staggering, forcing humanity to confront fundamental questions about the acceptable cost of life extension. Torres realized that the story was entering its final phase, but the resolution would determine the future of human enhancement research for generations to come. The International Tribunal convened in The Hague to address the longevity conspiracy, represented the largest human rights prosecution since Nuremberg. Torres covered the proceedings as defendants from around the world faced charges of crimes against humanity, human trafficking, and systematic medical experimentation. Dr. Kozlov's testimony revealed the full scope of the underground network's operations. Over 5 years, the criminal organizations had conducted experiments on an estimated 50,000 victims, achieving breakthrough longevity results through methods that legitimate research could never ethically pursue. We succeeded where Calico failed because we were willing to accept casualties, Kozlov testified without apparent remorse. Scientific progress has always required sacrifice. We simply made that sacrifice more efficient and systematic. The prosecution presented evidence that several world leaders had knowingly received treatments developed through human experimentation. The revelation that immortal political figures might have gained their longevity through criminal means triggered constitutional crises in multiple countries. Chen testified about the legitimate research community's responsibility for enabling the underground network. Her emotional account of how scientific ambition had led to systematic human exploitation became a defining moment in the proceedings. "We opened Pandora's box," she told the tribunal. "Our failure to consider ethical implications created a vacuum that was filled by monsters. The scientific community must accept responsibility for what followed." The trials also revealed that longevity technology had advanced far beyond public knowledge. Several defendants had achieved measurable life extension, with some showing cellular ages decades younger than their chronological years. The technology worked, but its development had required unconscionable human costs. The tribunal faced an unprecedented challenge: how to address crimes that had produced genuine medical breakthroughs. The longevity treatments developed through human experimentation could potentially benefit all humanity, but using them would validate the methods used to create them. "We cannot allow progress built on suffering to stand," declared Chief Prosecutor Elena Vasquez. "The ends cannot justify these means, regardless of their potential benefits." The trials would ultimately determine whether humanity would accept longevity technology developed through criminal means or reject it in favor of ethical alternatives. The tribunal's verdict sent shockwaves through the global scientific community and political establishment. The court found the defendants guilty of crimes against humanity, while simultaneously ruling that all longevity research derived from their experiments must be destroyed and never used for human benefit. Dr. Kozlov and 43 other defendants received life sentences, but the real impact was the court's declaration that scientific progress achieved through systematic human exploitation could never be legitimately used, regardless of its potential benefits. "The knowledge gained through these experiments is forever tainted," declared Chief Judge Patricia Williams. "To use it would be to validate the suffering of thousands of victims and encourage future atrocities in the name of scientific progress." The ruling created a massive controversy within the scientific community. Researchers argued that destroying potentially life-saving knowledge was itself unethical, while human rights advocates insisted that progress built on suffering could never be morally acceptable. Several countries refused to comply with the tribunal's order to destroy research data, leading to international tensions and diplomatic crises. The longevity technology had become a geopolitical weapon, with nations competing to develop legitimate alternatives while secretly preserving the tainted research. Torres documented the global response as governments struggled to balance scientific potential with ethical obligations. The revelation that immortality was achievable had fundamentally altered human society, even as the methods used to achieve it were universally condemned. Dr. Chen emerged as a leading voice for ethical longevity research, establishing an international foundation dedicated to developing life extension technology through legitimate means. Her organization faced enormous challenges, as they were essentially starting over while competing against research that had a 5-year head start. "We must prove that ethical research can achieve what criminal experimentation accomplished," Chen explained. "If we fail, the temptation to use tainted knowledge will become irresistible." The verdict had established a crucial principle: scientific progress must never come at the cost of human dignity. But enforcing that principle would require constant vigilance as humanity continued its quest for immortality. 5 years after the tribunal's verdict, Dr. Chen's Ethical Longevity Research Foundation achieved its first major breakthrough. Working with international oversight and transparent protocols, her team developed a life extension treatment that showed promise without the catastrophic side effects that had plagued earlier experiments. The new compound, designated ELF-1, Ethical Life Extension Formula, had been tested exclusively on willing volunteers with full informed consent and comprehensive safety protocols. Initial results suggested it could extend human lifespan by 15–20% while improving quality of life for elderly patients. Torres, now covering the story as a senior correspondent for an international news consortium, witnessed the first public demonstration of ELF-1's effects. The contrast with Calico's secretive trials could not have been more stark. Every aspect of the research was open to public scrutiny and independent verification. "We've proven that ethical research can achieve meaningful results," Chen announced at the press conference. "It takes longer and costs more than criminal experimentation, but the results are sustainable and morally defensible." The breakthrough came at a crucial time. Despite the tribunal's verdict, underground longevity research had continued in hidden facilities around the world. The demand for life extension technology was so enormous that criminal organizations continued to exploit vulnerable populations for experimental subjects. ELF-1 represented hope that legitimate research could eventually make illegal experimentation obsolete. If ethical alternatives could provide meaningful life extension, the market for criminally developed treatments would diminish. However, the new treatment also raised complex questions about access and equality. ELF-1 would initially be expensive and available only to wealthy patients, potentially creating the same immortal elite that had driven the original conspiracy. "We're committed to ensuring equitable access," Chen promised. "Life extension technology must benefit all humanity, not just those who can afford it." The foundation had established partnerships with governments and international organizations to develop distribution systems that would make ELF-1 available regardless of economic status. Torres realized that the longevity conspiracy had ultimately led to something positive, a new model for ethical scientific research that prioritized human dignity alongside scientific progress. The announcement of ELF-1's success triggered a global race to develop competing ethical longevity treatments, as governments and corporations realized that legitimate research could achieve meaningful results without criminal methods. The European Union launched a massive public research initiative investing $50 billion in longevity science with strict ethical oversight. China announced a similar program, though international observers remained skeptical about their commitment to ethical protocols, given their history of human rights violations. The United States Congress passed the Ethical Enhancement Act, establishing strict guidelines for human enhancement research and creating severe penalties for violations. The legislation was directly inspired by the longevity conspiracy trials and designed to prevent future exploitation of vulnerable populations. Private corporations also entered the field, but under unprecedented scrutiny from regulatory agencies and human rights organizations. The lessons learned from Calico's failure had created a new paradigm where transparency and ethical compliance were essential for public acceptance. Torres documented the transformation of the research landscape, noting how the exposure of criminal experimentation had ultimately strengthened legitimate science by establishing clear ethical boundaries and oversight mechanisms. "The conspiracy taught us that progress without principles is ultimately destructive," explained Dr. Hayes, who had become a leading advocate for ethical research standards. "The scientific community learned that public trust is more valuable than rapid results." The underground networks continued to operate, but their influence was diminishing as legitimate alternatives became available. Several criminal organizations had been dismantled through international cooperation, while others faced reduced demand for their illegal services. Most significantly, the survivors of criminal experimentation were finally receiving proper medical care and compensation through an international fund established by the tribunal. Their suffering had not been in vain if it prevented future atrocities and led to ethical alternatives. Chen's foundation had become a model for responsible research, with its protocols being adopted by institutions worldwide. The organization's success proved that ethical constraints could enhance rather than hinder scientific progress. The longevity conspiracy had ultimately transformed human enhancement research from a secretive pursuit of the elite into a transparent endeavor serving all humanity. 10 years after the Cayman trials, Torres finally gained access to the survivors of Calico's original experiments. The men and women who had paid millions for immortality now lived in a specialized medical facility in Switzerland. Their conditions stabilized, but their lives forever changed. Richard Blackstone, the billionaire entrepreneur who had been the first test subject, agreed to speak publicly for the first time since the disaster. At 83 years old chronologically, his cellular age fluctuated between 35 and 75, creating a surreal existence where his body aged and de-aged in unpredictable cycles. "I wanted to live forever," Blackstone told Torres during their interview. "Instead, I became trapped in a body that can't decide what age it wants to be. Some days I feel like a young man, others I can barely move. The worst part is never knowing which version of myself I'll wake up as." The other survivors faced similar challenges. Their cellular instability had created unique medical conditions that required constant monitoring and treatment. They had become living laboratories, their bodies providing crucial data for developing safer longevity treatments. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the facility's director, explained how the survivors' conditions had actually contributed to LF1's development. "Their cellular patterns showed us exactly what to avoid. In a tragic irony, their suffering helped us create safer alternatives." The survivors had mixed feelings about their role in advancing longevity science. Some felt their sacrifice had meaning if it prevented others from experiencing similar fates. Others remained bitter about the deception and exploitation they had endured. "We were promised immortality and received a curse," said Margaret Foster, a former tech executive who had been among the test subjects. "But if our experience helps create ethical treatments that actually work, perhaps our suffering wasn't entirely meaningless." The facility had become a pilgrimage site for researchers studying longevity science, with the survivors serving as living reminders of the importance of ethical protocols. Their presence ensured that the lessons of the Calico disaster would never be forgotten. Torres realized that the survivors represented both the cost of scientific ambition and the hope for ethical progress. 15 years after Google launched Calico with promises of solving death, the longevity research landscape had been completely transformed. The conspiracy that began with corporate ambition and ended with criminal exploitation had ultimately led to a new era of ethical scientific progress. ELF1 and its competitors were now available in most developed countries, providing modest but meaningful life extension to millions of people. The treatments added 10-15 healthy years to human lifespan, while improving quality of life for elderly patients. The technology remained expensive, but international cooperation had established distribution systems that made basic longevity treatments available regardless of economic status. The immortal elite that had driven the original conspiracy never materialized, as ethical research prioritized equitable access over maximum profit. Dr. Chen, now in her 70s but biologically appearing decades younger thanks to LF1, had become one of the world's most respected scientists. Her foundation continued to lead ethical longevity research while maintaining the transparency and oversight that had been absent from Calico's operations. "We learned that the pursuit of immortality without wisdom leads to destruction," Chen reflected during a ceremony honoring the victims of illegal experimentation. "True progress comes from understanding our moral obligations alongside our scientific capabilities." The underground networks had largely been eliminated through international cooperation and reduced demand for illegal treatments. The last major facility was shut down in 2029, marking the end of systematic human exploitation for longevity research. Torres had documented the entire saga, from Calico's ambitious beginning to the establishment of ethical alternatives. His reporting had helped expose the conspiracy and contributed to the reforms that followed. The survivors of the original experiments remained in specialized care, their conditions stable, but their lives forever altered. They had become symbols of both scientific hubris and the importance of ethical constraints. The longevity conspiracy had taught humanity a crucial lesson: the quest for immortality must never compromise the values that make life worth living. As Torres prepared his final report on the longevity conspiracy, he reflected on how the pursuit of immortality had ultimately made humanity more mortal, more aware of the precious nature of life and the importance of protecting human dignity. The ethical longevity treatments developed in the aftermath of the conspiracy had achieved something more valuable than the original promise of immortality. They had extended healthy human lifespan while preserving the moral foundations of society. Current research suggested that true immortality might never be achievable or even desirable. The cellular instability that had plagued early experiments appeared to be an inherent limitation of biological systems. Instead, scientists focused on extending health span, the period of life spent in good health. "We've learned that the goal isn't to live forever," explained Dr. Chen during their final interview. "It's to live well for as long as possible while maintaining our humanity." The regulatory frameworks established after the conspiracy had become models for other emerging technologies. Artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and cybernetic enhancement all operated under similar ethical constraints, ensuring that progress served humanity rather than exploiting it. The International Tribunal's verdict had established a crucial precedent. Scientific knowledge gained through criminal means could never be legitimately used, regardless of its potential benefits. This principle had been tested repeatedly as new technologies emerged, but it remained the foundation of ethical research standards. The survivors of the original experiments continued to contribute to research, their unique conditions providing insights that helped improve treatments for others. Their sacrifice had meaning because it prevented future atrocities and guided ethical alternatives. Torres realized that the longevity conspiracy had become a defining moment in human history, the point where humanity chose wisdom over ambition, ethics over expedience, and dignity over progress at any cost. The quest for immortality would continue, but it would be guided by the lessons learned from those who had paid the ultimate price for scientific hubris.